Hey, what's up YouTube? This is CookieMonster of ProForgeRacing, bringing you my personal history of Forge Part 2 of 4. For those of you who didn't see Part 1, it was my oldest maps ever on Halo 3. It was my first ever Slayer maps, and I had a bunch of them, and my first racetrack on Foundry, and then my first few racetracks on Sandbox. This is my next series of racetracks on Sandbox, which are improving a little bit, and you'll see them getting a lot better. This one's called Racetown, the reason it's called Racetown, Toon, not town, is because there was a Mad TV character called Lorraine, and Lorraine was pretty funny, and she would always go like, "Ha," and she would interrupt people while they were saying something to say "ha," like "huh," like what, and she was funny. Definitely go watch Lorraine on Mad TV videos. It's funny because my girlfriend's mom's called Lorraine, so every time I mention Lorraine and stuff, you know, she always gets confused. But, anyways, again, as I mentioned in the first one, this series is pretty much just for, it's more so for me anyways, because it's just like a trip down memory lane. But, this is, again, just like the racetracks in the first one, just like ridiculousness. The more freedom I had, actually, with these kinds of racetracks, because you could use any type of piece and do any sort of jump or stunt or make it any way you wanted to, and it didn't matter really how it looked, whereas double wides you have like 5 different pieces you can use, and they have to look kind of a certain way, and you can only have certain features. But I kind of like the freedom of these maps, and I got to make them, you know, sometimes with my friends in real life, and sometimes while hanging out or having sleepovers with my friends in real life. So these ones were fun to make, just kind of screwing around. But yeah, anyways, the next map here is called Extension, which I never finished, but it was one of 3 Slayer maps that I made on Sandbox. After making a bunch of racetracks, I went back and tried making some Slayer maps like I used to always on Foundry. This one's pretty much just like this giant room with like, well, not a giant room, a giant building with like 3 levels to it, and then there's just a giant staircase on the side. That's pretty much all I got to so far, but, well, that's pretty much all I ever got to. Not so far because I'm not still working on it, but I never ended up finishing this map. There were a few maps I forged on Halo Reach that you won't see. There was 1 or 2 infection maps I started that I just, you know, deleted, and then there was this tiny little racetrack I made called 30-second racetrack, because I literally made it in like 5 minutes, but it felt like 30 seconds. But this next one's called Forts, and it has 4 perfectly symmetrical, exactly the same buildings in all 4 corners, and there's a few various things in the middle, including a little building in the center with rockets on top. And I like this map because I thought it would be a good like multi-team map. This one's called Cap and Crunch, and at the top there, I don't know if you saw, you could actually go, and there was 2 sniper rooms, where there was a sniper, and then there was these 2 little things where they were the tubes, and you could walk through the tube, and they were kind of like launchers down. But this one pretty much is just like, it's kind of cool actually. It has like 2 different bases, a blue and a red base. It's completely asymmetrical, it's not symmetrical, and it's actually kind of a cool map. I definitely like this one a lot. Out of all my Slayer maps, at least the 3 on Sandbox, that was my favorite. This map is called Munster, and this is another racetrack, and this was the first one where I ever put pieces inside of each other. I did a very small amount, but you'll see the 2 places where I did it. It was very small, as I said. First, I learned how to put objects inside each other. I think I watched a YouTube tutorial on how to merge, where you had to make one piece disappear and then start a new round, put another piece somewhat inside where the other piece was, so you had to mark where it was. But right there is where I did it, and then you had to make the other piece reappear. Back there was like 4 or 5 pieces inside each other, and that was the first time I ever put pieces inside of each other. For those of you who didn't forge in Halo 3, it was way harder than Halo Reach. Halo Reach forging is so much easier than Halo Reach. Halo 3, excuse me. Halo Reach was easier. Halo 3, most of the good forgers didn't use ghost merging, so that means they had to start like a new round or a new game for every single piece that they wanted to put inside of each other. And on like racetracks, every piece was inside of each other, so they had to restart a new round or a new game for every single piece that they added. A new game. But ghost merging allowed you so you could make a ton of pieces without ending the game, but you had to go through this whole process and wait like a minute before each piece. But at the end there was where I put more pieces inside each other. Abramatic, I remember showing this to some kid, and he like didn't believe I made it. And it's really not that great, but it kind of looks great. And if you've never seen a racetrack ever before in Halo 3, this one would seem great, but it's really nothing special at all. It's not very good. At the time, I was very proud of it because I was able to make smooth turns. See, it started with, on Munster, I learned how to put objects inside each other. That was the first time I ever did that. This time was the first time I ever made a smooth turn, like inside of each other. Then you'll see my turns smoother and more turns. Then you'll see me start to do them on angles. Then you'll see me perfectly know how to do them on angles and stuff. You know, I teach myself slowly. Put objects inside each other, make a turn out of it, make somewhat of an elevated turn, and then make a smooth elevated turn out of it. This next one is called Goliath, and this was kind of a cool map. I like the beginning part because I made a smooth turn and I bordered it on all sides. I liked that. This turn right here, I just kind of liked how it was smooth and there was bordering on every side of it. And, you know, I worked really hard, and I love downloading maps. I literally, one time at Christmas, it was around Christmas time, it wasn't on Christmas Day, but I learned how to download tracks because my laptop is broken, so I went on my shitty house computer, which is like 2001, literally. I remember playing Lego Island on it when we first got it, and I was in like 6th and 1st grade. But, and then I would always watch YouTube videos of racetracks, Halo 3 racetracks, and, then I figured out one time you could download them. I saw the download link, and I created a Bungie.net account, and I downloaded a bunch of maps, and then I went on Xbox, and they were there, and I was like, oh my god. I love that you'll see my top 10 Halo 3 Sandbox Double-Wide Forgers series, because I really only liked racetracks that were on Sandbox, and I only liked them if they were smooth double-wide maps. This one's called Raceway, equals right bracket, which is a smiley face, and it's a really short map I made, but I don't know, it was kind of cool. But I didn't appreciate maps really, racetracks that were made on Foundry or Standoff or Avalanche or any of those other maps that people forged on a lot. You know, I just didn't appreciate any of them. I really only like Sandbox, and I didn't appreciate Supercross tracks or terrain tracks or tournament tracks. I only liked double wides. I liked some roller coasters on Sandbox, actually, quite a few, but I pretty much only like double wides. And I've been going back a lot doing my Halo 3 history video and most downloaded racetracks and all my Halo history videos, and I've been finding all these old maps, plenty of which are on Sandbox and they aren't double wides, and plenty of which aren't even on Sandbox, and I'm learning to love them all. And I really wish at the time I had, because there's so many maps, and I'm downloading them, terrain tracks on Standoff and stuff, and I'm having so much fun on them, and I really wish I had given them a chance back then. But I was inspired by so many people. But this next one's called Happy Little, and in the description it says Raceway, or Racetrack, because I liked Bob Ross, and I thought he was funny, the painter. It was actually his 70th birthday, the day before I'm recording this audio, on, it's the 30th of October. On the 29th of October was his birthday, and they had it on Google. They had, a drawing of him as the Google symbol, so it was funny. He was a painter, shoo, beat the devil, happy little trees. He was funny. But, yeah, I loved, all the best, really smooth double-wide forgers, but I also liked a few people who weren't quite as good, like Agent Brute. He was this forger. He made tons of racetracks on Halo 3, and they weren't, I never noticed the difference between, Rogue Shadow, who is, one of the smoothest double-wide forgers, one of the best, and, his maps, and Agent Brute's maps, I never noticed, the difference, because they were both just smooth to me. But then when I started, building more maps and downloading more maps, I realized, that Agent Brute's maps weren't really that smooth, but I still loved his maps. I thought they were so much fun because they were just, so unique. He made really popular ones, got thousands of downloads, his map Drawbridge, and, that was his, most popular one, I am pretty sure. But, this map is called Clint, and, as you can tell, Clint is not that great a map. I tried calling it Clint Eastwood, but that just, they didn't allow it. You know how Bungie blams something with an exclamation point sometimes? They blamed Clint Eastwood, so I had to name it Clint, which is ridiculous. But, you know, what can you do? You just can't win sometimes with Bungie. But, again, this is just a pretty simple map. This one actually does end pretty decently, so it's really not that bad a map, in a sense. However, it's, you know, it's not a good map. It's just the fact that it ends, you know, decently, and the fact that the whole map works pretty well, and that it's not, like, slow-paced and bumpy like a lot of my other maps were. This one is called Betsy, and, you can see the start of, a banked turn, like a turn that's made, up at an angle. I had to teach myself how to do it, and I tried figuring it out, and I started one here, and it almost started to look nice, but, it didn't work out, so I just made it into a jump. And, the reason this map's called Betsy is because the 4 manliest names on Earth are, Goliath, Betsy, Chuck, and Rick, in that order. Goliath is the manliest name ever, then Betsy, then Chuck, and then Rick. That's just how it works. And, so I named my other map Goliath, and this one is Betsy. And so, yeah, I end up failing the jump at the end here, you'll see, but I don't think this map was even as good as the map I made before it, Clint. I think Clint was, more fast-paced and fun. I actually kind of liked Clint, but, right here, you'll see I totally failed the jump. But, anyways, this next map here is called Speedtown. A very creative name again. This was my first attempt at, like, a roller coaster, and, it's kind of tragic how it turned out, but that's okay. This part's kind of cool, the man cannon and then the big jump. And then there's just, I tried doing one of those spirals down like I used to see on, like, you know, BAM's maps and stuff, and it just did not turn out very well. But I did teach myself, like, from my very first Forge map, that if you put an object on top of an object and then delete the lower one, the top one would stay. So you do see that on my upper, not my upper, I was thinking like an upper piece. You do see that on my earlier maps that, you know, some pieces are floating. Like my first ever map, I think, even. But this is a pretty tragic roller coaster, I won't lie. It was my first attempt ever. I mostly tried making, like, double-wide maps. Well, but first I made those ridiculous maps, and then I tried making a few double-wide maps. And, you know, this was at the point where I was downloading hundreds and hundreds of racetracks from all sorts of people. And, you know, I probably tried out making some double-wides, and then I saw some roller coasters and was like, I should try to make one of those. But, it did not turn out too well. You had to go really slow at some points, and it just wasn't very good. But, you know, what can you do? Anyways, jeez, I'm running out of things to say about this map. A lot of these maps were really long. I just didn't know, like, when to end it. Like, this one especially is a pretty long map with just, like, random pieces. I don't know what I was thinking. But, I just don't know. Yeah, right here's my attempt at, like, sort of, like, another spiral, but it's completely flat. But it does spiral all the way around and then jumps the beginning part of the spiral. And here's like a jump with like a little drop down to it. I really worked pretty hard. I made hundreds and hundreds of maps. Yeah, right there I kind of fail, so I just, you know, fly to the end. This one's called Tawwxt, and I made it with my friend Ethan. That was kind of an inside joke because one of our friends used to go, like I have a Tawwxt message. He kind of said that like, whenever he got a text, he didn't really realize that, so we always kind of did that, and it was kind of horrible. But this map, we just kind of made it messing around one night, having a sleepover, and you know, I told him I would show him, you know, how to make a map, and he pretty much wanted this to be like how the achievement horse maps are, like one person spawns on either side, and then you just kind of like race one-on-one to the end, and then at the end you get off, get in the teleporter, and go in another bouncy house, kind of like the one I had on Juicy Speedway. This next map is Expert. And this one, as you can tell, I'm getting a lot better at forging. This one is 2 away from the first map that's in my file share. And the first map I consider my good racetrack. So, Again, this one is called Expert, and I'm getting there. As you can tell, you know, it's a pretty smooth map. It's not incredibly smooth yet. I'm still getting there, but it's getting there. It's a lot smoother, and it's got a few jumps, and you know, it works out pretty well. It's not a horrible racetrack. It's just not very good, and I know that. But I'm getting there, and I did reconnect it, although the reconnection's kind of weird. It's just like this giant uphill. It's getting better. But this next one's called Inferno V4. This is the last map before I taught myself how to make a turn on an angle. What I did on my map to make a turn on an angle, which was my next map, is, you know, in order to make a piece float, you put a piece under one, and then you put one on top of it. But then what I did is the below one, I lined up the corners of the top one perfectly on top of the one on the bottom, and then I added a second one on the bottom perfectly aligned up with the piece next to it on the bottom. And then that way, when I deleted the top piece, or I made the top piece disappear, the piece that was below it was perfectly lined up with it, and the piece next to it was perfectly lined up with that. So then I put one piece on top of those ones, and I would turn the angle of it slightly, and then make I would line up the corner of it with the piece below the one that disappeared, and then turn it into that one a little bit. So then when the other one spawned, there was a piece perfectly against it that was kind of turned into it. And that was this turn right here. This first turn on Atlantice. I figured out how to make a smooth bank turn on my own. And the second turn made out of walls, you know, it's a smooth turn. The rest of the map kind of goes to shit. I don't know, like, where to go with it. I had this idea in my head of this great double-wide racetrack, but I just couldn't make it. But as you can tell, I taught myself how to make a double-wide turn. You know, I had to teach myself all this shit and figure out the physics of it. And, you know, I didn't learn from someone. No one, you know, came into my game and showed me how to do it. There wasn't tutorials on how to build racetracks, only on how to merge itself. So besides learning how to merge and then later on learning how to ghost merge, I taught myself how to build the maps entirely. So I was really proud of that. This second one, called Conscripted, is a hell of a lot better than the first one. This one just looks like a really good map. It doesn't quite look like the very, very good pro maps, but I mean, it's something you might download. This is something I would have downloaded at the time, because I would download any kind of double-wide map, whether it was smooth or whether it was not. And this was a good map. It had that giant scenery piece too, which is supposed to be a face at the top. And there's teleporters near the beginning, and if you walked through the teleporters, they would lead you to that. By the way, none of my maps at this point are set up to the race game type. This is what I consider my second map. I consider Atlantice my first racetrack, but all I mean is my first good racetrack. But it isn't until my 15th good racetrack that it's racetracks compatible, because I was trying to apply for mapmaker on halotracks.org, and my maps were good enough, and SMM 2010 wanted to accept me. He was the head of maps at the time, one of them. But he said I had to make my racetracks compatible with the game type, and he ended up, on my second attempt, allowing me to get mapmaker, even though my maps weren't compatible, because I had applied twice and all 4 maps were good enough, just weren't compatible. But he let me slide, so that was cool of him. But then Can't Stop Donut, I actually taught Can't Stop Donut how to ghost merge, and then I kind of helped him forge, but he knew how to make them compatible with the racetracks game type, so he taught me that. So we kind of bounced ideas off each other. And this map, called Steepe, was my third one, and this was the first map that I ever put any ghost merging in. My first two, Atlantice and Conscripted, I made 0 ghost merging. This one I used a little bit of ghost merging. Not the whole thing at all. Just part of this map was ghost merge, a little bit of it. And as well as on my 4th map, St. Peter, a little bit of it's ghost merge, most of it's not ghost merged. And but then after these 2 maps, so my first 2 were not ghost merged at all. 3 and 4 were a little bit ghost merged. And then pretty much from 5 until 20, they were all ghost merge 100%. This map, St. Peter, I was really proud of. I thought it was, awesome, especially this huge turn here. I thought it was smooth. And as you can tell, 4 maps ago, I was making Inferno V4. you know, that messy map with that jump that slammed you down hard, and now I'm making maps smooth as this. But, anyways, be sure to watch part 4 of this series, which will be coming out soon, and that will be, part 3, which will be the rest of my, racetracks on Halo 3, and then, part 4 will be all of my maps on Halo Reach. But thank you guys very much for watching. Cookie out!